Hey, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining me on this edition of Down to Earth. It's the show in which we talk about the issues that matter. And today on our show, we're going to talk about why Black homeowners pay more in taxes, mortgages, car notes, and credit cards than any other group in the country as opposed to whites. We need to talk about this because in our conversations today, we keep talking about how the inequities that exist in our system. We talk about systemic racism and how systemic racism is structured. It's structured in how it operates. It's systemic because I have to think about the impacts of what happens when I get behind the wheel of a car to drive, or when I apply for a mortgage, or when I apply for a loan or a credit card, whereas white people don't have to think about that. And so we have to talk about these issues because they're important. Not only are they important to the political discourse of the day, but they're always important until this issue has been resolved. This issue is not resolved yet. When it is resolved, then we can stop talking about it. But until then, we have a long way to go. There's a lot going on. Today is the 12th of October. So we are exactly 22 days from the general elections in November. And all across the country, there is early voting. So people are voting everywhere and people are making their voices heard and so on. COVID 19 is still a reality so far. Almost 213,000 people have lost their lives in America, and over 7 million people have become infected. And it is October. We haven't hit the full stride of the next wave yet. The scientists are right. We're proving that because they did talk about a second wave. We haven't hit that stride yet. We're still days out from that stride. And my greatest concern is that when that stride happens, it is going to come around. It seems like we're on a collision course with it, that it's not going to change because the government, the current administration, doesn't see anything worth changing. They don't believe that COVID 19 is a problem. They're still having rallies. Just yesterday, on the 10th of October, which was Saturday, they had a super spreader event at the White House. They paid people $150 and Black people and Latinos, and signed a non disclosure agreement. And people feel great about going to an event at the White House that we don't know if they've sanitized. I wouldn't be caught anywhere near the grounds of the White House because that's a petri dish and a hotspot for coronavirus. Why would you want to go there? But you can't stop people from doing what they feel they should do. You can't stop people from visiting and from listening. It's just the craziest thing. You can only point them in the right direction and hope to God that they actually do get it and will do it. So there was that going on. Then the LA Lakers won the NBA season, and I'm like, why are you even taking credit for a season that didn't happen? There didn't seem to be any fan participation. All the teams did not play due to some people testing for coronavirus early on in March and April. So why are you even attempting a season? It's the same thing with the NFL. I don't know. And the Big Ten. Do they realize that the fluff has gone out of it? All these events are just super spreader events. I wish in the name of God that you all would stop hosting these live sporting events. Stop it. You don't care about public health and you are hurting people. I wish they would quit. It's almost as if it's almost as if everybody is like, whatever. It's almost as if everybody is like, to heck with it. You see what I'm saying? So it's not it's not it just is unbelievable the way that I see people just going forward like it is just crazy. So we're going to talk about something today that is a bit troubling, but uncomfortable is more the word that I would use to describe it. But I want to ask you a question. It's October. And after October comes November, Thanksgiving, and then we just typically we go into a holiday party season. That is not about to happen. You don't want to go to any Christmas parties By the way, did we even go back to work to have office parties? We're not having any social events that customarily happen at this time of the year. That's not going to happen either. So I guess we're going to hold Zoom Christmas parties and so on. Is that okay? Hmm. We're probably going to do that. We're probably going to cheer in the new year this year. I'd hope, I'd hope to God that 2021 is not a repeat of 2020. Who is with me? You're all with me on that, right? Because I'm saying that I can't do another 2020. How about you? Just say it, just whisper it. I can't do another 2020. I simply can't. I can't. I can't. It's too nerve wracking. 2020 has been too nerve wracking. It's just been too much, right? So we're going to pray that 2021, when it comes, will herald us in. And how many of you have gotten my book, Through the Fire? Here it is. It's been available on Amazon.com, on BarnesandNoble.com. So I trust that you have gone out and gotten a copy of my book. The reason I was talking about 2020 and so on is, have you gone and gotten a planner? In spite of everything, life still goes on. We still have to plan for 2021. Yes, our plans might be mitigated by the virus, but you still have to have a plan. You can't sit back and just pretend like 2021 is not going to happen. None of us have the future. I know none of us know what will happen from day to day. We hope and pray that we will all arrive in 2021 just as we did in 2020. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you stop planning or pulling anything out. Still go and get your planners and get yourselves ready for 2021, because we shall overcome this, right? Right. So I didn't watch SNL Saturday night. How many people did? I didn't watch it because I can never stay up late enough to watch it. I just confessed right there. In my region in the Midwest, sometimes it's 10:30, sometimes it's 11:30, and I can never catch it. So I will set the timer for it, and then I fall asleep before 11:30, because 11:30 is kind of late on a Saturday night to be up. So I never catch Saturday Night Live. But there was so much buzz about it on Twitter the next day that I had to go to YouTube to watch it. How many of you liked Bill Burr's segment? I was rolling on the floor laughing my butt off. I kid you not. It was just hilarious the way he encapsulated and captured what it means to be a white male and what it means for white women who are pretending and who are appropriating Black culture and appropriating being woke. Go check it out. But it's a social commentary in itself, because it is true. You know, white women are the enablers of white men. They stood by his side as he continued his oppression and crimes against humanity. It is what it is, isn't it? And they profited and gained from it at the same time. So they shouldn't be saying anything right now. In fact, one of them is getting confirmed to be on the US Supreme Court, even though she believes that women are handmaids to men, and she doesn't believe in abortion, and she believes that the Affordable Care Act should be removed and be repealed. In her white privileged self, she's sitting at the confirmation hearings looking terrified at what they're going to reveal about her record, and as she should be. She has no business being on the court. There are so many other qualified judges around the country who are white, Black, and Latino. We're not saying it's her color that's the problem. What I am saying is her qualifications. She's only been a federal judge for 2 years, like 2 years and 10 months or something like that. So it hasn't even been quite 3 years. And there are so many other judges who deserve that esteemed lifetime appointment. And here she is being there because the president thinks if he places her on the court and he wishes to challenge the election results, then he will have a likely person. Now, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. It probably is, because they own the Senate and they're going to vote for it. All the Republicans are probably going to vote for it, vote for her confirmation. But it probably is not going to turn out the way that they think it will. You know what I mean? In terms of her being a likely person to contest the elections, it probably is not going to be that. It's quite possible the election results are going to be so overwhelming against the president that he's going to have no choice, and his plans thereafter will remain just that, plans, but will not actually come to fruition. So it's going to be interesting to see how they walk this one through and how they put this one through. It's kind of like, okay, just shove another one down our throats. Which brings me to talk about how white privilege is and how some people don't even realize how they're active participants and how they're active recipients of what the rest of us refer to as white privilege. We can say it's white privilege because we don't benefit from it. We don't benefit from the hierarchy and the associated benefits that come with it. This is why I'm a little bit puzzled that a group of white men in northern Michigan could get together and say that they have a plot to carry out civil war in the state. It's like, are you crazy? You don't have anything else better to do? Because you're sitting on your white privilege that has already afforded you access to getting a mortgage, access to better rates to get car loans, access to better rates to get credit cards, access to better education, access to better living conditions and water quality and every air quality. And you want to throw all of that away to go sit in a federal pen because right now you are experiencing some adversity. Well, welcome to real life. Most of us have to go through adversity. There are white people who had to work their way through college and have made it since. So I'm a little like you. I'm a little like puzzled as to why do you think you would need to go that far to make it? It doesn't make any sense. You're literally throwing away the privilege that has benefited you to be so free. Craziest thing I have ever heard. But you see how white privilege operates. That you think that you can go and plot something. Now, the rest of us who walk around in black and brown skin, if we start talking about stuff like that on Facebook or any social media platform or Google it or something, the feds show up at your door because immediately they ascribe you to being a terrorist and being an insurrectionist, and they start moving and making plans against you. Meanwhile, people who are white, they talk about this stuff and it's just like, oh, they're just angry. No, they're more than angry. They were intent on doing something because they felt that their rights were violated because the governor said we all need to keep quiet to avoid the spread of infection in Michigan. And what do you know? They forced her, put political pressure on her to reopen the state too early. She advised against it. They forced her. They even went as far as going to the Michigan Supreme Court to strike down her emergency powers. You know what's happening? Michigan is going to have a coronavirus outbreak. The state is trending that way. The cases are rising and rising and rising, especially in northern Michigan. So you know what's going to happen? What's going to happen eventually is what? Yeah, they're actually going to see a rise in cases. Incredible. But today I want to talk about how Black homeowners who have been discriminated against in every facet of life are further discriminated against in terms of how much interest rate we pay in mortgages. How much do we pay for homeowners insurance, for mortgage insurance, and how much do we pay for property taxes? A case study for this is the Detroit property tax system that has overtaxed Black homeowners for decades, and something that even a white mayor has not been able to resolve because it's so entrenched in the city code of doing business. And I want to take a few minutes, I'm not going to be long, to take a few minutes to show you what the result from an MIT study has shown. Now, to be honest with you, we didn't need this MIT study to disclose this because most of us have lived it. I myself have experienced this when I lived in Central Florida. I discovered that our neighbors who are white were paying way less for mortgage than we were, despite we lived in the same neighborhood. We lived in a cul-de-sac. So there was no difference between our homes. But they were paying $200 to $300 less in mortgage than we were. We also discovered that they were paying less in homeowners insurance and less in property tax. And they were also paying less on their car notes than we were, less on their credit cards than we were. They had higher limits on their credit cards, despite the fact that they had very little equity in their home because they had such a high equity. We also discovered that we paid down way more on our mortgage than they did. These are the contributing factors that we must talk about, because this is the racial disparity. Because oftentimes most white people like to say that black people are lazy. Have you ever heard that? And most white people like to say, well, I don't know why they just don't work and save their money to buy a home. That's what we did. That is ignorance, because you don't understand the cluster of anomalies and maladies that beset a black family. Let me help you. Let me explain. So, a typical black family, first of all, we have employment issues. We have employment issues because we're the last ones hired and the first fired. All the time, every time. We are never consistently hired, despite the fact that we show up and work. This perception that black people are lazy, I think by now most of you have come to the conclusion that that is not so, because you don't know a lazy black person with all the black people you know. So you realize now that that is something that has been culturally passed down from one generation to the other, and is part of the structured and systemic racism that perpetrates and perpetuates the system of oppression and white supremacy, right? So we are the last ones hired, first fired. So we are never consistently employed to save money. Secondly, we're paid less than our white counterparts, even if we're doing the same job. That's how the unions came to be about. When black people from the South who had come to the North to work in industries like manufacturing and the automotive industry, they found that they were, while doing the same work and while being exposed to worse dangers than white men who were working did, white men were being paid more than black men were. So unions were formed to made sure that covered them, to make sure that everybody was equitably paid. That unfortunately does not happen in every sector. A typical white woman earns 77 cents to the dollar that a white man makes. A black woman makes 68 cents to the dollar. So you see the disparity. So we don't earn enough. We don't stay hired. We don't get hired often enough, and we don't stay employed long enough. So it defeats the purpose for us to acquire savings to pay down on to buy a home. The second thing that happens to us is that lenders are more liberal with white people than with black people. They may have strict requirements, like you must have 20% to make the down payment. But a white person can come up with 10% and still get the home, and still get the mortgage, and still benefit from lower interest rates than a black person would. It's structured racism. It's written into the contract. It's there. The other thing that happens too is that black people tend to have lower credit scores. I have been saying for years it's time to eradicate the credit score system. Find a different way to provide people with access to credit. It's the wickedest system ever. How are we, with the problems I've mentioned before, how are we going to save enough to pay our bills consistently if we are the last ones hired and the first fired? If we're not paid enough to accrue savings and to make timely payments, and if we don't stay employed long enough? How are we? We're also given high interest rates on our loans. So if we take out a car loan, it's a higher rate. If we get a credit card, it's a higher rate and lower credit limits. There are many white people who have used their credit cards to make a down payment on a house, on a car, or whatever. We have to literally work to save it. And with all the structured racism that is in place and systemic racism, it kind of presents itself as a barrier. I kid you not. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So with all of these in place, what MIT research did was just simply to attach a name to it, because maybe if they say it and put it out there, then maybe white people will say, oh, so it is a problem. We've been screaming and crying that for more than 150 years. So somebody said, well, what are the solutions? We got to find better ways to lend money to people of color. We can't have high requirements that are barriers. It's the same thing black business owners face. in accessing credit to start a business or keep a business going. Still can't find the resources to access a loan because the banks will not lend you, but they will give a 28-year-old with a flimsy ass business plan a line of credit from Chase Bank for $50,000. But a black person with a solid, who comes with everything in the book, will not get that $50,000 line of credit. It's crazy. It is very, very crazy. When you do see it happen, they know somebody or their cousin works in there, or it's a fluke. Maybe you just happen to be the one that they said, well, we don't want to be accused of racism, so let's give it to someone. Right? But it is what it is. And these things happen continuously to the extent now where we say systemic, and it is structured. It's structured because I walk into a setting and I'm applying for a loan. And because I show up in my skin, the structure of the system is such that I won't get the loan, irrespective of what credentials I bring to the table. But a white person with less credentials walk in and they get the loan. That's where the structure is wrong. The way we have loans and mortgages structured in this country needs to change because it's biased against people of color. And in a few years, people of color are going to represent the majority. The disparity is going to be that the people who are in power, the people who are running the banks, running the loans that we get, and the political systems will still be white. They'll be white at the city level, the county level, the state level, the regional level, and the national level. They're still going to enact wicked policies because of structured racism that continue to rival and pillage what black people and and brown people are trying to achieve. So we still have a ways to go. The forecast is we still have a ways to go, but we have to start somewhere. And for those of you who are white and you feel that other white people should band together and so on, your idea sort of dates back to slavery, which didn't work, was failed. It dates back to John Crow. It didn't work either. Reconstruction, John Crow, it didn't work. It's not going to work now. The world has pivoted and has pivoted away from structured and systemic racism and is moving away from that to equity. And the quicker we realize that is the more settled we're going to be. It's been a nice walk in the park for you folks, white people. It's been a nice walk. You have enjoyed supremacy in all things. As Bill Burr made a joke of it, that you have created crimes against humanity and has caused oppression in order for you to stay powerful. That's what it is. Yes. You created oppression to oppress people so you could stay powerful. That is slowly being eroded, not slowly, it has eroded. And your grip on power is fast losing its trap of control. And therefore, what we now must do is to acknowledge that systemic change has happened and that people are no longer happy with the status quo. Of course, you're going to find some dissatisfied people in the rural areas for whom they haven't come forward yet. They're still clutching to a way of life and a way of thinking that didn't work, and they refuse to accept that it will work. One of the young men involved in the plot against the Michigan governor, I read his story. His girlfriend and he had just broken up and she kicked him out. He was just ripe for someone to influence him. Can you imagine what they fed him and told him? You can just see where they told him that your girlfriend is a bee and she is in charge and she kicked you out of the house because she's part of the system of oppressing the man. You can just literally see that. So if he was separated from what he considered to be his rightful place, then he's just a sitting duck for anybody to come along and feed him some alternate theories of oppression and alternate theories of who is at fault. Naturally, they're going to hate the governor. The governor is female. If it were a male governor, they would have just hated his politics. But it's a female governor. They just hate the fact that she what? Has power. Nothing a man hates than a woman with power. And she has the power. Now, this governor is not a power-hungry person. This governor is just, I just want to do the best. Have you ever heard her speak? She's even adorable in the way she speaks. I just want to do the best for my people, for all of Michigan. That's how she sounds. You're just like, come on, Gov, just do it. She did her best. Leave her. Leave her be. The people love her. Leave her alone. Why are you trying to get rid of the best thing? If it were Snyder there, you saw what Snyder did when he had control of Flint. He gave them poison water that is going to kill generations to come. This governor sat down, looked at the facts and looked at the science and said, my God, we didn't even know this at the time, that the lasting effects of the coronavirus is that it leaves people with pre-existing conditions, even if you're healthy. So she said, I can't have that happen. Let's try to mitigate that as much as possible. But other men, especially this young man, Fox, Adam Fox, whose girlfriend had just put him out, sat back and said, wait, all women are coming against me, and the governor is just part of that. He got his feelings mixed up. Now he's going to sit in jail for a time, and he's going to realize how messed up he was because he had a structured system of oppression in his favor. The oppression was that if he showed up anywhere in any sphere of life, whether he showed up at the polling booth, if he showed up to get a job, in education, in healthcare, in loans, whatever sphere of life he chose to participate in, just by showing up, he is guaranteed success. He didn't realize that, did he? Nah. What he looked at was the fact that his girlfriend kicked him out, and there is a woman in control of Michigan who is saying you can't go anywhere. So after his girlfriend kicked him out, maybe he wanted to go down to the bar to drown his sorrows in a pint or two and a couple shots, and then go back home and beat the hell out of her. But he couldn't do that. So he and others got together and said, well, let's get rid of the lady who is in charge of Michigan. It is crazy. I am just asking the question. When you look at facts like these that says Black Americans are paying more to own a home and falling further behind, and the fact that white Americans are not in the same boat, I'm like, so why you want to go be locked up and sit in a federal pen when the system of oppression is biased in your favor? Here are the facts. The facts are these. Let me read them to you. According to a study from MIT, Black Americans pay more than any other group to own a home, a disparity that contributes to roughly half of the $130,000 retirement savings gap between Black and whites. That's the facts. Black homeowners pay more in mortgage interest, mortgage insurance, and property taxes. Let's talk about property taxes for a bit. Come to Detroit. Detroit is a Black city where traditionally home values are low. Yet, Detroiters pay more in property taxes than people in Southfield and people in Oakland County that is predominantly white. Are you hearing me? That is structured racism. It's structured so that Black people will continually struggle to pay their property taxes and eventually lose their property and become dispossessed and disenfranchised. That is structured racism. It's written into the tax code. It's written into the modus operandi and the ways in which state governments and systems operate and systems of commerce operate. It is what it is. Let me read you some more facts. You still don't believe me? Let's go. Let's continue because we know you're gonna like. We know you're gonna believe this. Overall, the differences in mortgage interest payments amount to $743 a year, according to the study from MIT. Mortgage insurance premiums come to $550 per year, and property taxes are about $390 per year in comparison to white folks. Together, this results in $67,320 in lost retirement savings for Black homeowners when invested over 30 years. These inequities in the system make it impossible for Black people to hold on to their homes. Interesting, isn't it? I hope the folks at the city of Detroit are listening. When I post this to Twitter, I'm going to tag them. Why? Because this is important, because the structured racism that exists and the inequities that exist continue to operate against Black people. This is why I cannot understand why a group of white males, the most privileged group of people on the planet, the most privileged group of people in America, who could have anything they want, who could do anything they want, would get up and sit down and worry about hurting a sitting governor who has no impact on their daily lives. She's, first of all, not the person to rob you of freedom. If you ever meet her, go have a talk with her. Yes, I have met her. Why would you want to disrupt the political system that is benefiting you? It doesn't make any sense. The system of politics and the systems of commerce that run together benefit you. So why do you think you should benefit them? Do you think they were going to give you the keys to the Treasury of Michigan and you could have it as your personal thing and they were going to let you live in the governor's mansion for the rest of time, you and your family? No, what was more likely to happen is the United States would come marching up in your house and take you out like they just did. So they said, all right, we're not going to kill you, but we're going to lock you up. If the people who plotted against the governor were black, they wouldn't be alive right now to tell the story. How dare them? They would have been eliminated. But you're white. So they're giving you due process, even saying you're not guilty yet. You're still until proven innocent. You're still innocent until proven guilty. Giving you the benefit of the doubt, something the criminal justice system does not offer to Black Americans. I say unto you this morning that there is something seriously wrong with anybody who is white, who has not found themselves to be successful. There are no barriers for you to prevent you from advancing. There are none. The barriers that you see are what you have imposed on yourself. Because if you choose to take a step out of your situation and out of your perceived mental barriers, you're going to find that there's a whole system just waiting for you to step right into it. Take advantage of it. That's what Jeff Bezos did. Jeff Bezos' parents gave him almost $231,000 to be specific to start Amazon. Imagine that. Do you know how many Black parents would like to be able to even give their children $2,000 to start a business? That never happens. Elon Musk came to America from South Africa by way of Canada. He could do that. He's a white male. He can travel freely around the world. He came, they gave him some money. He got some money. He never said where he got it from. His father, we found out later, uh, imprisoned blacks in a mine, in a gold mine in South Africa to make his money. That's where he got his money. That's why he doesn't talk about it. Now Elon Musk is considered a billionaire. But where did his money come from? It's blood money. That's why I stopped following him, because I was curious. How did this guy make all this money? I had read the story of Jeff Bezos before. And even though I said to myself, lucky dude, he has parents who could give him $231,000, helped along by his whiteness. It was easy to propel him. If he had even 1 ounce of the dedication and commitment that is required, he would have made it. I can begin to tell you of all the Black entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial ideas that I have seen and heard in the last 15 years who have not been so lucky. And even Black business owners who struck down by the coronavirus can't make it. So when I see white people who are saying, oh my God, I'm so oppressed, I'm like, where? You don't know what oppression is, because if you knew, you wouldn't call yourself oppressed. There's nothing keeping you back except yourself. Unlike the rest of us who are blinded and who have systemic racism working against us and structured racism working against us. So I want to ask you, what will happen? What do you think is going to happen in order to overturn the structured racism that has structured itself so that people of color, Black and brown people, find it more difficult to access mortgages and so on? Well, I'm glad you asked, because it's going to take what? Public policy. The government leads the way by going back to simple basic facts. Make this equitable so that it flows. Then hopefully the big banks, hey, right? The big banks will start thinking in a similar way. Let me see who has joined. It's not going to change. You think so? Dang, dude. It's not going to change. Oh my, it's not going to change. Some people think it's not going to change. And you know why? Because when you look at it, you have to say to yourself that How is it going to change if the people who will still be in charge of it are white? They're still controlling the money. They're still controlling and implementing public policy. How will it change? But it has to. It's going to, the pressure that is mounting right now on these systems and causing it's kind of causing a light to shine on it. It's costing something. There will be no, I'm not saying it's going to change in the next 5 years or even 10 years. I can see why, and it is easy to feel hopeless, especially as we look around our society. Black and brown people are disproportionately impacted by the coronavirus because of systemic racism in healthcare. Hello, somebody. There's also structured racism called redlining. Remember that? That causes Black and brown people to live in communities where pollution is highest, thereby creating a pre existing condition in itself for coronavirus, which is a disease of the lung to impact the air that people breathe. It's also structured racism in the sense that most Black people and people of color live in areas that are called food deserts, no access to fresh fruit and veggies. Over time, that creates a deficit in your system. Alcoholism and smoking are highest in those areas because people are doing what? We all know it, trying to find ways to cope with the systemic racism that you have no control over. The structured racism that makes you go into a place, into a doctor's office, and they see your color before they see your need. So they don't treat you for the diseases that are present. How many Black people will tell you they go into a doctor's office and are complaining about pain and their pain is ignored? How many? Talk to me. Quick, fast, and in a hurry. How many Black people go in and say, I feel dizzy in the mornings? And instead of checking for blood sugar and making sure they get the right medication, they put you on something like lisinopril that causes you to have cancer 5 years down the road. Are you hearing me? Systemic racism, structured racism. So these are the inequities. And it is very easy for most of us to say, God, I don't think it will ever change. But I have to believe that it has to change because my children are not going to live on to this. They're not going to put up with this foolishness. You know, years ago, my ex-husband used to have this grand idea. His idea was the way to cause the system to change was for all Black men and brown men to marry white women and have children who are brown. And then, hey, you just have to change it. He was just weird like that. I didn't think that that solved the identified problem or solved the problem at the root. But he said it's a start. I don't believe that. That's just how we're looking at it. Because to him, just like my viewer says, it's not going to change. It was the same thing my ex-husband said. We've got to find a way, though, to cause this. I'm sorry about that. I moved my hand and everything went crazy. We've got to find a way to make sure that these systems, these commercial systems, these systems of commerce, and we have to create public policy. This is why it's important for government. You see, an election is in process right now. In most municipalities, there are other people on the ballot, right? There are other people who are on the ballot. Vote carefully. You're not just voting for the federal government for a change in national direction, but you're also voting for the people who make policies at the local level. Those policies are important because those policies are going to impact how banks lend money, how mortgage systems operate, how property taxes are distributed. Why should a person in Detroit who earns $21,000 a year have over $1,800 per year in property taxes? That doesn't make sense. And the person in Warren or in Southfield who makes $80,000 a year pay $800 a year in property tax. Do you see what I'm saying? It doesn't make any sense. But these things continue to happen nationally. That's why it's systemic. If you are in Detroit, it happens in Detroit. If you go to Baltimore, it happens. If you go to New Orleans, it happens. So it is systemic in its application. It's structured because it is written into the ways we do things. It's almost as if we're going to have to rewrite the way we live. That is perhaps what we're going to have to do. I'll give you some more facts before I close this out. Mortgage lenders use a system of risk-based lending. We all know that because we have all. I have a question. I'm a white EMT that works in Inkster, Michigan. Do you believe I should not save Black lives because I'm white? No. In the same way that if you were Black and you're an EMT and white, you go to a scene where there are white people, you should still save lives. This is not about, you see, this is exactly what the system does. It pits people against people. At the end of the day, we're people. You're white, I'm Black. He's Black, you're white. She's white, you're Black. At the end of the day, we're people who need each other. But the system never taught us that. The system created disparities and differences that kept us separate, right? Let me see. Do you see what I'm saying? So now it's kind of like we are going to have to rewrite the way we think and rewrite the way we view ourselves in order for us to move forward. We're handing down a legacy of racism and systemic racism to our children, and they're going to have to fight 3 times harder to overcome this. And it's not fair to them, neither is it even fair to us. Why should a Detroit homeowner pay more in property taxes and earn 1/3 of what someone in Farmington Hills earns? Do you see what I'm saying? This is the structured racism. Why should a Black woman who worked for a hospital system check into the hospital for coronavirus and was sent home and given Tylenol as a fever reducer, but was never tested and was never given the right medication, was not even admitted to hospital, and she ended up dying? Whereas white people go to the hospital as soon as they start coughing and manifest a fever, they're admitted. That's systemic racism. It's pitting us against one another. And at the end of the day, we are people, right? All right, let me see. Wells Fargo been guilty for years. Yeah. Well, the CEO of Wells Fargo recently said that he doesn't see any Black people with talent around him to employ. And you got to ask yourself, oh my God, I have relatives who work at that level in banking in other parts of the country. So when Wells Fargo said that, I raised my eyebrows like, seriously? Right? Sometimes the resources are few, like jobs. I'm reading my comments here from it. And that is exactly where the problem comes from. Black people are the last hired and the first fired. In fact, I read a report recently where after the pandemic and some companies had started rehiring people, what they found was that Black people were not being rehired, but white people were. It was the person who conducted the study said that it was her assessment that white people who were the bosses and the owners practiced racial bias. Plain and simple. That's what it came down to. Friends, this is what it comes down to. It's a bias. It's a racial bias. You look at people and you judge them based on their color, and you have no empathy and no remorse for throwing a person out, knowing that firing that man or that woman is sending their family into poverty. It's firing people who right now who rent apartments, who have rental payments to pay, and you fire them knowing that they can't live, and it's literally sending them out on the street. In Austin, Texas, people live under bridges in Austin, Texas, one of the wealthiest cities and one of the wealthiest states. It's rich with oil money. And people live under bridges in Austin, Texas right now because of these draconian policies. So let me say that. So the companies always pick whites first, even when equal Black qualify. Of course, you have trouble believing that. I'm more qualified than my boss. Say that one more time. Yes, they do. It is a fact. Here's something else. They will give a job to a foreigner before a Black man. Is the foreigner more qualified? Is the foreigner more qualified? You know, we're talking about all this stuff, and people, you remember when the current president had said some years ago that people from Nigeria are from shithole countries? You remember that? And a realtor who is white finally came forward and said the homes she sells in the DFW area that are $500,000 and up, the people who can afford them are people who are Nigerians and who come from other countries, because those people are more educated. They have doctoral degrees, or they're doctors or engineers. They're paid well. And what we fail to understand is that for you to make it here as a foreigner, you have to be better than everyone else. So you go all the way out on education. You have to have two or three more degrees than your American counterpart, especially if your American counterpart is white. Even within the state government, I've known of people who were supervised by white people who just had a high school diploma, and they held doctoral degrees and did not achieve any level of parity with their white counterparts. Right? You see what I'm saying? Don't shoot the messenger. These are the issues that we have to spring apart. And these kinds of discussions that we're having is bringing all of this to the fore so that we understand where we're coming from. And it helps us define, what do we want to do? What kind of country we want to be? What kind of community we want to be in Inkster, in Inkster, Michigan? What kind of community do we want to be in Southfield, Michigan, in Detroit, in Baltimore, in Philly, in Miami-Dade County? What kind of country do we want? Do we want to continue to have these disparities or not? Right? I appreciate the hardworking Nigerians coming, but business needs to come first. I agree with you too. I appreciate them too. But the problems that prevent Black business owners from accessing credit are what is causing Black businesses from moving forward. We don't get the same level of access to credit because it's stymied by credit scores. Have you ever gone to apply for a loan and you ask yourself, you don't think if I had had a job for all the last 40 years of my life that I would have paid my bills on time? But they make it sound like you not paying your bills is because you're lazy. No, it's because you never kept a job. You never kept a job because you were pilloried as the Black person on the job. You were pointed out. You couldn't say anything. You walk even the chalk line and you still couldn't keep the job. They still find ways to make it difficult for you. Come on now, right? These are, yeah, you're right. These are the facts. Do you see what I'm saying? Have you ever? Whereas this little girl she barely finished college. She walks into Chase Bank and they give her a $50,000 loan to go start a juice bar or a yoga studio in Midtown Detroit. And Blacks who have scraped together all their money to come up with a down payment can't even get a consideration from Chase Bank. I kid you not. And to show you how these problems are widespread. Earlier this year, I tried to participate in a seminar that Chase Bank was offering. I just wanted the information. And part of what they were presenting was they were trying to provide amelioration to communities of color. You are going to be surprised that you think that this is just a Black people complaining problem in Detroit or in Philly or Baltimore. Chase Bank has been accused of doing the same thing in Paris, France. In fact, they were sued by a community in Paris, France, for the same reason, that though the bank was in the community, it would not give out loans to the brown people who lived in the community. Therefore, Chase Bank took the unprecedented step that it was re-examining the way it does business. Do you see what I'm saying? Yes, I am well read for a reason, because I gotta have the facts, right? Let me read your comment. One of the only things Trump gets right is that Americans need to come first in America. I agree with that. I have been to ATL for 8 years. They keep Black and low jobs. Our Black corporations come from New Jersey, New York. Jesus. Do you see why we have a problem? You see now? We got to work together. We have to come together, because at the end of the day, this is our America. This is our reality. Politicians come and go. Obama is no longer president. Bush is no longer president. Clinton is no longer president, but their policies remain. Trump is not going to be president. His policies are going to remain. There's going to be a new guy in the White House. Their policies. Politicians come and go. We have to make sure that we have the people who represent us and who represent our interests. Because at the end of the day, it's me and you, bro. It's me and you, dude. It comes down to us. It's us. We are one. And we have to accept that. We need to stop pointing fingers at one another and talking about you this, you that. We need to just say, you know something? If the sky is going to fall over America, it's going to fall on all of us. Let us try to hold it up so the sky doesn't fall. That's the way I see it. Let me read what more you're saying. Uh, do you see what I'm saying? I am a little bit concerned because to me, America is a special place. I like the idea of America, the promise that if you work hard, you can succeed. I like that a lot. There are many places in the world where you could work your fingers to the bone and never get anywhere. This is why foreigners keep coming to America. If you don't believe me, just sit down and talk to people who come from other lands, and they will tell you how their parents and grandparents worked their fingers to the bone and never got anywhere. Michelle Obama said it the other day. She said her family, they worked their fingers to the bone to send them to school. But at least in America, they could go to school, they could change their lives, right? In other places in the world, it doesn't work like that. It's a system of hierarchy and inherited wealth that continue to perpetuate. We don't want that here. We want our own agency and the right and freedom of the individual. So if you wake up tomorrow and you decide that you want to go build yourself an empire, you should be able to go down to Secretary of State, go down to the government's office, the state government's office, create your own company. You should be able to go and get a loan to start your business. That's the promise of America. Despite the fact that you weren't born with someone born into a family where they could give you $231,000 or $11 million or $1 million, you could start right there with the $60 you have in your checking account or the $100 that you have and start building something. That's the promise of America. And that's what we need to fight to keep. You've lived in California 2 years, but classism is creating homelessness. Well, California is a unique study, and it's going to be that way for a while. You got to look at, maybe the wildfires are showing us that people in California had moved from the urban areas to go further out, right? And they didn't take care of the land the way the Native Americans did. Native Americans had a culture of creating burns, what is called organized burns. It happens in other parts of the world, by the way, especially in the third world. It's a program funded by the United Nations. It's called controlled burns. So what they will do is, instead of like hills, people live in the hills in California. I used to wonder about that if the rains come, all that there are no trees that is going to hold the land, so it's going to create a landslide. Well, in other parts of the world, they have what is called controlled burns. California did not do that, controlled burns. And so they continue to build. What you're seeing in California is excess wealth, the rise of the oligarchy, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So it's creating a class of super rich people. And the distance is getting wider and wider. It's created by public policy, by not taxing everybody. You should be taxed based on your wealth. How much money can you afford to pay into the system? When Reagan started pulling that away, slowly but surely, we started to create the billionaire class. The billionaire class didn't have to happen. We should have been taxing everyone based commensurate with what you earn. That way, we all have a part in the system. You would still be super rich. You'd still be mega rich, but you just pay something into taxes to keep the country going. Some of us, especially for some of you white people, you're looking at it in the wrong context. You're looking at it like they're coming at white people. Are you rich? Are you part of the mega million rich? No, you're not. So you're going to find yourself, just like the rest of us, in the Hunger Games, where we're going to fight for food, where we're going to fight. We won't even own our property. I'm telling you all right now, if you own a piece of land somewhere, hold on to that bad boy. Do everything in your power to hold on to your property, to hold on to your land, because eventually it's going to come to these people are not valuable because they don't own property. It's coming back again. Do you see what I'm saying? It's going to come back. And what has happened is public policy where you don't tax the rich and the super rich. How can Jeff Bezos not pay any taxes and you and I have to pay taxes? Is that fair and equitable? No, it's not equitable. Do you see where I'm coming from? So if it is not equitable, then what happens? Then we're all losing. And so Jeff Bezos is just going to tell the people whom he can afford to build me somewhere on Mars to live, because I'm only going to work and make my money on Earth, but build me a place on Mars to live. There's a movie called Elysium, Elysium. It stars Matt Damon. Go watch it. You know, Hollywood has a way of telling us the truth. So they put out a movie that kind of tells you what people are thinking. You got to understand, we are too busy fighting for scraps here and fighting for everyday living. We're not paying attention to what is really going on. But the people who have money to spare and who are not worried about it know what they're doing. They know that they're creating this oligarchy, and they know that in a while they won't be able to live where they live because people are going to rise up. So they're making plans and they have their exit strategies in place. I am saying to all of us, let's prevent that from happening. It's already started. Let's prevent it. Let's make sure that people know that you got to pay. If I'm paying taxes on the little that I have, you need to pay taxes on the most that you have. You see where I'm coming from? That's why Trump bought out the millionaire class. They're silent because they're like, well, his policies benefit me. I don't have to pay taxes, so I have more money. Hello, somebody. So when white people are jumping up going to Trump rallies, I'm like, do you see the disparity with yourselves and him? Here is what you need to take away. If you go to a Trump rally and Trump is a billionaire, he rides on Air Force One, he lives in the mansions and so on, sits on a gold toilet. Let me ask you this question. When you're walking away from the rally, you're going to drive your Ford F-150 that's probably 5 to 8 years old. You're going to go home to a house that is steeped in mortgage, overrun with mortgage. You look in your retirement account and it has no value. It's worth $100,000, but the actual value is $57,000. You're looking at, if you work so hard all your life, you are likely to have, you work in the factories, you inhale fumes, you're likely to get sick before you die. You have to ask yourself, what is the difference between me and that person? Me continuing to support that is not going to help my bottom line in the long run. That's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in this place where we're looking at Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and all the billionaires made more money during the pandemic. What happened during the pandemic? We lost our businesses. We lost our jobs. Yeah. We lost our way of life. People are homeless as a result. 61 people have been made without jobs since March. 61.8 million people. In the meantime, Bezos, Elon Musk, and others profited. That's my story. That's where the rubber hits the road. That's the pedal to the metal. So when you go in your Ford F-150 and your Chevy Silverado and your Dodge Ram, by the way, I love me a Dodge Ram. Y'all pray for me because it's up next, okay? And when you see me, I will be flying down the street. I love me a Dodge Ram pickup truck. Oh my God, they can continue to make that into perpetuity. I just love it. When you get behind the wheel of that and you're putting the pedal to the metal, ask yourself, how much is this vehicle costing me? It is going to blow your natural born mind. That's the disparity that is tearing our country apart, and that's the real problem. All of the rest of it is just smokescreen. They don't want you to think about it, because if you think about it, you will see that it is true. Because they don't want you to focus on how did the billionaires make more money during the pandemic, and the rest of us lost our jobs. 61 million of us lost jobs. That is another 13. The estimate is that 30 million people are going to be homeless. Are you all hearing me? Did you hear that? 30 million people are homeless. Where are they going to live, y'all? Lord God, take the wheel. Right? People were on eggshells prior to the pandemic, but no, so hurt. No small business, our jobs gone. Look at this one. The problem is U.S. giving power to billionaires and took power away from ordinary citizens. Yes. Well, if you live in Michigan, your insurance will probably cost you more than your car note. Would you stop? Would you stop? If you live in Michigan, your insurance costs you more than your car note. How? Do you see what I'm saying? The insurance lobby petitioned the governor at the time, Snyder, to make sure that your car insurance is way more than your car note. And this is you every month. Like, what the? I'm not even a risky person. Do you see what I'm saying? So who is benefiting from that? We have to start looking at the facts. When you lay down tonight, I say this to all of us before you fall asleep at night, turn the TV off. For the last 20 minutes before you fall asleep, just let your mind just think about these things. This is why it cost me to produce the show. It cost me to talk about these things, but I do them anyway. Thanks so much, everybody. I do them anyhow. And I do them and I want because I want people to start thinking like I do. Start thinking about why is it that the billionaire class made more money, right? Than during the pandemic and everybody lost their businesses and 61.8 million of us lost our jobs. Isn't that crazy? Think about that. Have you seen the Hunger Games? Man, two movies you're going to watch, Elysium and the Hunger Games. Watch the first Hunger Games. You'll get it. Because they printed up the second one because people were like, whoa, is this what's going to happen? Watch the first Hunger Games. You probably have to get it on one of the streaming channels. I don't know, or maybe your kids know how to get it. Ask your kids. They usually know how to access it if it's something you have to request on your streaming service. But ask yourself that and watch the movie Elysium. When that movie came out, Matt Damon gave an interview and he said, everybody needs to watch this movie. He wasn't saying it so you watch the movie to make a buzz with Hollywood. No, it is the content of the movie that you got to see. That's where this is going. And hear me out. This is not just an American problem. This is happening everywhere else in the world where the oligarchy is taking over and removing the systems and controls. They're telling me I gotta go. They're telling me I've been on too long. I have to go, right? Why are people not taking 60 million job loss? I don't know. On average, America can only produce 250,000 jobs per month. The commerce and power was consolidated during pandemic. Thank you. They're telling me I gotta go though, guys. They're telling me I've been on for too long. Thank you. I'm wrapping up, right? But think on these things. Think on these things. They focus on, they make us fight against one another. So we will never unite. Because like now we come together, we're white and black. We come together. Look at our ideas. We're looking at this from what? A different perspective. Like, wait, you're going through the same thing I'm going through. Then why we're fighting? Drop the guns. Don't point the guns at one another. Put the guns down and let's start talking. How do we change this? That's our issue. Thanks so much, everybody. I love you all. Thanks for sharing with me this morning. I appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks so much. Be blessed. Wow, I overstayed my welcome.